So, what is bliss? Both Oxford and Cambridge dictionaries define bliss as perfect or pure joy or happiness. But that doesn't really get us to know what makes up bliss. How do we get to bliss? Well, a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that bliss has something to do with the things that interest or engross them. For example, if somebody feels joy while cooking a 5-course dinner, they assume that their bliss comes from cooking. If somebody can fully zone out while moving to the beat, they feel as though their bliss comes from dancing. Or if somebody feels most at ease when talking with family or friends, they feel as though their bliss comes from socialization. But they're all wrong. You see, your bliss doesn't come from the things you do or the things you love. It comes from the feelings those things create. When you take your unscorched souffle out of the oven, your bliss doesn't come from its smell, but rather from the sense of accomplishment you feel. When you are able to fully do that third pirouette, your bliss doesn't come from feeling the air around you. It comes from feeling as though you've achieved something. And when you're able to talk to people freely, your bliss doesn't come from the words you share. It comes from the sense of freedom or ease you feel. The things that you enjoy doing are not the key. Feelings are the key to bliss. I'll give you an example. My bliss comes primarily through performing, writing, and socialization. These things aren't my bliss because performing's really cool and writing's great and talking to people is just amazing. These things help my bliss because I think I'm good at them. When I perform, when I hit that high note or perform a monologue so well I can feel my arms shake, I feel as though I'm excelling at something. When I write something and then read it to someone and they say it's one of the best things they've ever heard, I feel as though I've excelled. And when I'm able to put sound to my thoughts, to converse with another so freely, I feel excellent. My bliss comes through excellence. Now, why do we have bliss? What's the point of bliss? Well, you see, despite the fact that human beings are physically resilient, our minds are quite fragile. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental illness in their lifetime. Also, according to the World Health Organization, suicide is the 15th leading cause of death. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 90% of people who commit suicide struggle with a mental illness. It is clear that sometimes our brains can be detrimental to our health and lead us to self-destruction. Now, we may be wondering, where's the cure? How do we stop this? And it's actually quite simple. Bliss. You see, bliss is a psychological medicine to fix any developmental errors you may have accrued over your lifetime. Now, where can we gather these errors? Well, according to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the human brain doesn't stop fully developing until the mid-20s. That's around 25. That leaves 25 years for things to go wrong, for things to mess with your head. And most of that happens in childhood. Now, while it's clear that we seem to be predispositioned to certain personality traits, the way that we grow up in our environment can affect how those personality traits evolve and whether they stick with us until adulthood. Sarah Hampson wrote an article about how while children seem to be born with innate traits, they tend to keep those traits based on whether people interact with them positively or negatively. Take a hostile child. Because they're hostile by nature, everyone around them is aggressive. They're tired of the way they act. So they start to learn that, hey, to survive in this world, I have to put up walls, and I have to be ready to fight at any minute. They carry this into adulthood because they're never able to drop it. Eventually, this can lead to horrible consequences, such as social stigmatization, depression, anxiety, and anger issues. This is further supported by an article written by Simone Horman, Corinne Zupanik, and Mark Dombeck, who analyzed the interaction of babies and their caretakers. Let's take a sweet child and a bitter child who have an impatient caretaker. The sweet child doesn't cry when you pick them up. They're always laughing and giggling. They're adorable. They're what you want when you have a baby, right? So their caregiver is more loving towards this child, and they pick them up more often, and they feed them, and they play with them, and they talk to them. But the bitter child is more sensitive. Picking them up results in a massive temper tantrum, and they don't smile for you. So the impatient caretaker feels fed up. They don't talk to the child. They leave the child in the crib most of the time, unless they have to feed them, have to change them. You get it. So the sweet child grows up to be even sweeter. They feel as though they feel well within themselves. They know that people love them. But the bitter child grows up to wonder why people hate them, why their mother wouldn't talk to them. As a result, they have completely different personalities and completely different ideas of bliss. Now, it's not just the environment that can affect how we develop. Part of it has to do with the way we see things. When we observe situations, we use something called structural analysis of social behavior, or SASB. There are 3 perspectives of structural analysis of social behavior. The first perspective is self-concept, or how you view yourself. The second perspective is how you view others. And the third perspective is how you view yourself through the eyes of others. Depending on which perspective you are more inclined to, you can grow up completely differently compared to somebody who goes through similar experiences. Take a kid who's told that they're worthless. From the first perspective, they'll be confused. They don't feel worthless. They feel like they belong. Why is this person telling them that? From the second perspective, they'll feel angry. Why are you telling me I'm worthless? I don't want you in my life. And from the third perspective, they will feel worthless. Because if this person says they're worthless, if this person thinks they're worthless, then they are. Depending on which perspective is used, a variety of different developmental paths can be initiated. This is extremely important to consider when you're talking to those around you. Because based on the way they react to situations, things can affect them more negatively than they could the person who has a good self-concept or a good outer concept. Now, none of us have perfect childhoods. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are horrible, and you want to forget them. But when it comes down to it, we're all equal in the fact that none of them were just lollipops and skipping and giggling. So, none of us develop perfectly. We all develop differently. And this is why you see such a wide variety of bliss. What works for another person to cure their breaks doesn't work for the next. Take my bliss, for example. I am a self-admitted, recovering, special snowflake. I used to think I was better than everyone else. Like everyone had to kiss the ground I walked on. It's not because I was snobbish, well, maybe, but it was because this was how I reacted to the world around me. As a child, I felt as though I didn't belong, and that people didn't like me. I thought when people laughed, they were laughing at jokes made at my expense. Or when people looked at me, they were looking specifically to tell me, we don't want you here. I thought that they cast me out because of my differences. And so I decided to cling on to those differences, the little things that made me me, such as introversion. I was a huge introvert when I was younger. And academic success. A lot of my friends weren't as good at school as I was. And so I looked to those main things, and I figured, what can I do with these? And then I found things that I was good at. Acting, singing, dancing, writing, reading. And I turned all these things into excellence. And I started to feel as though I was actually worth something because I was excelling at something. Now, of course, I don't think I'm that snobbish anymore. You may think differently, and I hope you don't, because I'd like to be liked. Everybody does. But my bliss helped me through a time of feeling like I wasn't anything, of feeling like I didn't deserve to be here. As a result, I wasn't led on a path of self-destruction that I may have been led on otherwise. I had a sense of support. That's why I can be here with you now telling you this, feeling my bliss, because I feel like I've excelled because I get to stand on this red carpet, and it's really soft. But bliss is what kept me alive. So, I've found my bliss. How do you find yours? Well, back in 1954, a man named Abraham Maslow made a chart called Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. This is everything that human beings need to survive and flourish. At the bottom are physiological needs: food, water, air, the works, you get it. Then, safety, having a job, having a home. Then relationships, families, spouses, friendships, and then self-esteem, knowing you're good at what you do, and that other people around you like you and enjoy seeing you do what you do. And then self-actualization, knowing what you believe in, knowing what gods or lack thereof that you worship, or what philosophies you choose to follow, or just being able to sit and be content with that. Most of us fall around the third bar. We have relationships, we have food, we have houses, we have jobs if we're able to hold them. So maybe your bliss lies in self-esteem. Could you turn to the person next to you and tell them your name and tell them who you are and feel as though you will be accepted? If so, your bliss lies in self-actualization. Do you know what you believe in? Do you know what philosophies you want to follow? Wherever you fall on this scale, your bliss will lie just above it. Of course, as you continue to progress up the scale, your bliss will change and grow, and that's a good thing. But the core of your bliss will pretty much stay the same. To conclude, bliss is one of the most important things you can try and find. Bliss is as tantamount to your survival as food, air, and water. So, I recommend that when the day is done, you go home and you look for your bliss. And once you find your bliss, you hold on to your bliss and you don't let go. And you follow your bliss. That's what'll help you flourish. That's why you're alive. Thank you.